Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Higher Education Tableau User Group meeting for March of 2024. We're glad you could be here with us today. We've got a full agenda for you. We're going to start off with announcements. I'll open the floor in just a minute if you have anything you'd like to say. We'll have Meet a Community Member with Jim Gibbon from Princeton, followed by Creating and Scaling a Tableau Training Program with Maureen from Ohio State University. And then from prep to print, unveiling our data journey to peer-reviewed publication with Lindsay and Jan from Vanderbilt. And then last, we'll have our typical wrap-up and chat. I do want to make one announcement before I open the floor. We are going to have our Slack email purge coming up soon. For anyone who is new to the group, we do have a Slack space for our higher ed tug. And we do limit that to people who have .edu email address or the like if you're from a different country. We also open it up to education adjacent nonprofits and make case-by-case allowances for people who kind of explain why they still have an interest in higher ed and feel like they should be part of our Slack group. We just do this to keep it a safe space where you're not feeling pressured by any sort of vendors or feeling like you can share freely, because we're not opening up to a bunch of people from outside of higher ed. So that being said, if you are registered for the Slack group under a personal email, we encourage you to go in now and change it to your education email account so that when the purge happens, you're not out in the cold. So in addition to that, on a more fun note, I wanted to share a link for Analytics Day 2024. It's coming up in June of this year. We're opening registration in April. We don't have a date set yet, but if you want to sign up now so that you're sure to get updates, there's a form for you to do that. And I think, Roshni, if you haven't already, is going to share that in the chat. And now we'll open the floor for any announcements that you may have or open positions at your institutions that you want to share. If you don't feel like sharing them verbally, you can share them in the chat and on our open positions Slack channel page. Any announcements from the group? All right. I think we can move along then. I'd like to welcome Jim Gibbon, the lead business analyst and Tableau developer at Princeton. Jim has worked at Princeton's Center for Data Analytics and Reporting for about 4.5 years. He manages Princeton's Tableau servers, trains new users, runs their internal user group, and serves as a Tableau consultant for data viz projects across campus. Prior to this, he worked as an analyst in Princeton's Office of Advancement for 9 years, and before that, he came to Princeton in 2003 to do a PhD in sociology. Jim, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks very much.
Absolutely. So I will just go through a few questions we have, and then we'll get to our lightning round after that. Start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your role in your team.
Yeah, sure. So like you said, I work in central IT on part of a team that has responsibility for the university's information warehouse. So part of our folks are working on data integration, development, ETL developers and data modelers and that sort of thing. And then another part of the team is focused on BI. So we support primarily Cognos and Tableau, and I'm the Tableau person. And yeah, you kind of walked through what I do mostly. It's like a range of things from Tableau server administrative roles through, Tableau doctor troubleshooting calculations for people down in the trenches, and sort of everything in between. Training is a favorite part of my job as well. And yeah, I'm kind of around just to be that support person for the campus on Tableau.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. So what type of data do you work with primarily?
So yeah, so since I'm supporting folks across, departments and centers, it can be really diverse, which is one of the things I really like about the role. A lot of it's administrative data, student related, finance related, that kind of thing. But more and more, it's becoming like facilities and HR is a partner, and career services and those sorts of things. And then a little handful of academic research sprinkled in. And as a recovering academic myself, that's kind of nice to kind of work on those projects as well.
That's awesome. That definitely sounds like it keeps it interesting.
Yep.
So you've already kind of touched on the next question, but if you want to expand on it, how do you use Tableau at work?
Yeah, so this comes into play a lot when I focus on the Tableau admin sort of server side of the house. So I built a dashboard simply to keep track of our inventory of creator licenses. I'm
Mhm.
just making sure I know, whose hands they're in and which departments have them, and are folks making use of them? Do we have enough? That kind of thing. And then another one lately has been a dashboard to track the dashboards created by folks across campus that have been published to our servers. Um, this one helps me, do things like monitor the content and reach out proactively if we see dashboards that are really slow to load or things like that. We can go out and help people with extracts and kind of speed up the end user's experience.
Very nice. So what is your favorite Tableau project that you've ever worked on?
This one was kind of tough. I mean, I went back to actually my first ever production dashboard way back in advancement, maybe 10 years ago. And it was a suite of dashboards for our stewardship program. It was going to track things like have students sent thank you notes to the donors who provided their scholarships. You want to make sure you're having those students reach out. And it was one of those cases where my colleague had just been manually merging lots and lots of spreadsheets and really doing that work regularly every month. And it was a mess, and it took her hours and hours. So it was a good experience of kind of modeling the data and then just really dead simple visualizations of tracking, where are we with these students, and then giving a few actions like she could click on a student's name and, draft an email to a student in Outlook. So it was great. I learned really how Tableau could really improve people's efficiency. And the other part of it that I liked was, she was a real Tableau skeptic. She really was kind of almost anti-Tableau at the beginning, diehard Cognos user at first, but then she really became our biggest promoter after she saw how much time this was saving her and helping her out.
I just love giving those aha moments.
Exactly.
So how long have you been using Tableau and how did you learn to use the tool?
Yeah, I've been using it for, I guess, over 11 years now. I started with just some tutorials I found on Tableau's website initially, enough to kind of get me the job that I wanted, where in the advancement office where they were using Tableau regularly. And then I really picked up a lot from my coworkers who had a lot more experience. And then I guess about after using Tableau for 6 months or so, I got really lucky. I took a 2-day advanced course or workshop in New York, and it was hosted by Tableau, but Steve Wexler was the instructor. And he's just phenomenal. I think most people know him as, a co-author of Big Book of Dashboards. And he was great. And turns out he's a Princeton grad, so we connected over that. And it was just, it was a nice experience. So that would really help up my game. And then I just want to add too about Tableau conference, because I went, I guess, about 4 times, sort of the mid-teens. And those early years were really heavy on those 2-hour workshops, like long tables, and everyone had a laptop, and you'd kind of, hunker down and just work on LODs or advanced calculations. And I came away just saying, this is the most fun I've had at a conference before, and this is also the most I've ever learned at a conference before. So those were really great sort of formative experiences.
I 100% agree with you about that because if it hadn't been for those hands-on, um, like you said, 2-hour blocks, I
Yeah,
don't think I ever would have learned to write LOD calculations.
exactly. Yep.
And I felt like I was in way over my head the whole time I was in there, but I still walked away with something.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Completely.
all right, so what is your favorite Tableau feature?
I kind of gave it away, honestly, there, and I'm repeating Justin from last month, but I have to say LODs. This was years and years ago, but when they first came out, I was struggling with all the table calcs and duplicate rows of data that we were working with, and I must have hit one of those conference sessions right at the right time, and it just seemed to solve so many problems, and it still does work quite well for me. So yeah.
Definitely. What is one thing you would like to learn more about?
So I've had dynamic zone visibility on my horizon for quite a while. Actually, what turned me on to it the most was your presentation, I think, on the Christmas songs you did, like 2 hymns you could. I was like, oh, I see. This is really cool. Wow, there's a lot we could do with this? But it's kind of stayed on the back burner with other things I've had to, work on. So that's definitely on my list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've incorporated it in at least one work dashboard, so definitely
Oh, awesome.
worth doing. It's good for user experience.
Mm-hmm.
What is one thing you wish you could go back in time and tell Tableau newbie you?
I think it's that you learn best by doing, and it's best to work with your own data. And I walked through a lot of tutorials and guides, and Superstore is great. That's a great foundation for everybody, but it's one thing to work with that, and then another to really kind of drive it home with your own data. So I guess that's something else to tell people who take classes. It's like as soon as you can get into your own data, the sooner the better.
I agree. It's a lot more fun too.
For sure.
Do you ever use Tableau outside of work? And if so, how?
Yeah, I haven't really done anything on like Tableau Public or put anything up there, but Tableau is my go-to tool for like exploratory data analysis. So whenever I find I have some new data I need to answer some questions about, I always go to Tableau first. The three main uses, I was thinking back, how have I used it? The first one is kind of cliche, but tracking my daughter's Halloween candy, like her hauls, like I see a bunch of people in the community do that. And then another one was personal finance projects, like tax related stuff, blah, but it comes in handy.
Mm-hmm.
And then another was visualizing some textual analysis output for my dissertation. So getting into like text analysis data.
I wondered if you'd ever used it in sociology.
For sure. Yep, definitely.
Was there anything else you'd like to share before we jump into the lightning round?
I just want to say thanks for everyone who's been out on the Slack group sharing their data points and questions and use cases. So it's really helped me to hear how other schools are using Tableau, and kind of pushes me to refine what I think I know about Tableau in a lot of cases as well. So I'm learning a lot, and just thank people who organize it and keep it running. And definitely, yeah, Roshi just put a shameless plug in the chat. Definitely sign up if you haven't joined it yet.
I agree. It's a great place to troubleshoot and meet people who understand what you are doing.
Yep.
Right. In that case, we'll get into the lightning round. So March 18th through the 24th is National Introverts Week. So that's coming up. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I gotta go with extrovert here. Although as I get older, I feel like I'm swaying the other direction, but definitely, yeah, extrovert.
And March 14th, in just a couple of days, is Pi Day. So what is your favorite irrational number?
I didn't know I had a favorite irrational number, so I looked out there in the world and I found it's got to be square root of 2. Check out the Wikipedia page for square root of 2. It's awesome. Nice, clean, and simple. And there's also drama with a reported murder happening thousands of years ago related to the secret of this number. So very cool.
Well, now I'm definitely going to have to
look it up.
True crime fanatic. So yes.
Yep.
And I think Roshni just put it in the chat.
Nice, thanks.
So March 11th was yesterday, and that was Fill Our Staplers Day, which I didn't do. And so when you think of staplers, the first thing that comes to mind might be Office Space and the red stapler. So what movie best describes your workplace?
This is such a dangerous question to answer in a public setting. I know, but seriously, I thought about it. I even asked ChatGPT to remind me of some movies that might work, and I came up pretty much nothing. I think my workplace is so even-keeled and drama-free that it's just, it would be hard. It doesn't lend itself well to a movie script. So I'm going to just leave it at that, I think.
I think I would have a hard time answering that one as well. So March 4th through 10th, last week, was National Procrastination Week. That's why we're just now getting around to asking, are you a procrastinator?
Nice. I like to say I'm a recovering procrastinator. I get my work done, but I've grown over time. I in grad school I even had a blog with productivity tips that I probably spent more time on procrastinating than the actual research I should have been doing. So I've come a long way. Deadline driven, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think when I was in school, I was more of a procrastinator, and now that I'm in the workforce, yeah.
Right. Yep.
March 10th was National Mario Day. So who is your favorite video game character?
This is it's a split between Mario and Sonic. I think they were what I played the most growing up. So gotta give them both props for that.
Excellent choices. March 11th, yesterday, was National Dream Day. If you could make one dream come true, what would that be?
Okay, I'm going to interpret this literally like a real sleeping type dream. Yeah, the ability to fly. That's it for sure.
Love it. March 13th, tomorrow is Ken Day. I don't know if you've seen the Barbie
Yep.
movie. There are a lot of different Kens in there. Which Ken would you be?
Yeah, I've seen it. My daughter says I'm so dorky for having to look them up, but I went out there. I'm like, which one am I? Gosh, I don't know. I'm gonna go with basketball Ken, I guess, played by Kingsley Ben-Adir, I think. Not for the sports thing, but because he's kind of like the smiley sidekick, who helps out. That's about it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up too.
Yeah.
And rounding out our lightning round, March 12th, today is National Plant a Flower Day. And March 19th, in a week, is the first day of spring, finally. So, what is your favorite flower?
Yeah, my favorite is whichever one I see blooming first in spring, like the one that catches me off guard after a long winter. And so I guess it's usually something like crocuses or daffodils, but just whatever kind of like pops up and says, oh, okay, we're getting through this.
You're up further north than me. Is it looking like spring there yet?
I've seen, yeah, that's what made me think of this. I was walking by someone's house and their lawn was just full of purple flowers. And yeah, so we're getting there.
Nice. Well, thank you again so much for being our Meet a Community member this month. If anyone is interested in signing up to do this in the future, please let us know. We would like to feature someone every month.
Thanks, Jenny.
All right, next up, we have Maureen Henry. Maureen is a senior analyst and a Tableau server administrator at The Ohio State University. She supports the university's Tableau server environment, assists with large-scale executive dashboard design, and co-facilitates the Tableau community engagement. During her 7 years with Ohio State, Maureen earned her certificate in the practice of data analytics, her Tableau desktop specialist certification, launched the Tableau training program for the university, and created, which was at the time, the most widely used dashboard at Ohio State. Prior to her work at Ohio State, Maureen was a data analyst at United Way of Central Ohio and United Way of Greater Toledo. And before starting a career in data, Maureen completed her undergraduate studies at The Ohio State University with a BA in Communication Analysis and Practice. Born and raised in Central Ohio, Maureen is an avid college football and March Madness fan, so you must be super excited. So she welcomes any college football trash talk or March Madness bracket discussion. She's going to talk to us today about creating and scaling a Tableau training program. Maureen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. IO. It's a little thing, if you guys saw the chat, that we here in Central Ohio do. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Now, one thing that I left out of my bio that I think is probably relevant is that my experience with Tableau started in 2018. I had a coworker go on maternity leave at the time, and my boss walked by my desk and he said, Maureen, can you get that dashboard ready to present next week? And I said, sure, no problem. Within 48 hours, I think I had like my head in my hands and I was questioning my life choices. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know how to replicate it. And I felt completely overwhelmed. So I think that experience has really shaped my experience when it comes to training and working with other people, specifically being able to make it simple or a little bit less scary, because I always tell people at Ohio State that I don't want them questioning their life choices like I was doing. So around the time that I was questioning my life choices with Tableau, we at Ohio State had Tableau desktop that was just being used in a couple of pockets across the university. So a license would be purchased maybe for one person here or there, and they would be able to develop something. However, reports could not be refreshed. We couldn't refresh data sources. That was all a manual process. And if you wanted to share what you created with someone, there were only a couple options. You could have a PDF. You could schedule a meeting with someone. You could go ahead and hope that they also had a desktop license, or you could have them contact IT and ask for Tableau Reader to be installed. Tableau Reader was the best out of some not so great options, but it at least allowed you to interact with the viz. This all changed when we went live with Tableau Server in January of 2019. Users could now refresh data sources. They could create connections and schedule those. No more manual processes around it. They could also easily view and share content. So if you were trying to see what somebody else was doing, or they wanted you to look at it, all you had to do was click a link. It was very easy to do. During this time, we saw Tableau grow dramatically. We used it for our COVID-19 reporting. So all of our internal reporting, such as around building openings, vaccination, all of that was internal. And then external reporting around things such as the number of positive cases. We also would use Tableau when we transitioned to Workday. So a lot of the legacy systems and reports, we would go ahead and move those over. We had some of them in Tableau. We found that it offered more flexibility for people with the Workday transition than what was offered within Workday as a reporting tool. So in January of 2022, we had Tableau for a couple of years at this point. Users we knew loved to interact with the data. They enjoyed discovering new insights and seeing what they could find. And our user base had grown to over 16,000 users. At this point, we decided to do a survey of creators, stakeholders, leaders across the university that we had worked with, and to see where they felt about data in general. So not only Tableau as a tool and say the cadence of upgrades, but also, who were you working with? Who were you collaborating with? Where were those opportunities that we could see to really bring the data community together? This survey uncovered that Tableau was the preferred reporting tool for 88% of users, and that of our over 300 creators, 60% wanted more training. Many had, had a similar experience to me where they had just come on and they had to learn it themselves. So while we were doing things such as the Workday project, COVID reporting, on taking over server administration, so all the back-end work. We also were the help desk. We had to negotiate the Tableau contract. We had many different hats that we had to wear at any one point. The team also went from 6 full-time employees to 2 full-time employees, myself and my coworker, Jimmy. So there were 2 of us serving over 16,000 users, and we would receive over 240 help desk tickets a month. We knew this pace was not sustainable. We were both very tired. So at that point, we knew that something needed to change. So when 60% of creators said that they wanted additional training, we thought this would also be a way to help address the number of help desk tickets that we were getting. Tickets were ranging from how do I log in to calculations, all kinds of things. Our goal with training was to offer self-paced, hands-on, relevant training to users. Before our training program, we had one video that we linked to, and it was a recording of a Zoom call that was over 3 hours. So it was literally just a Zoom call from the beginning of the pandemic, and it was 3+ hours. Nothing was time stamped. Users just kind of had to go through at their own pace. And we knew that many people we had heard that they didn't have the time for a 3+ hour video. The training must also use Ohio State data, or data like what Ohio State works with. So similar to what Jim and Jenny just talked about, one of the things that we heard from our community was that Sample Superstore would be great. You know, it's a great data set that's out there. It's not something that people could easily apply to the higher ed space. So if you work with admissions or enrollment data, if you work with alumni or prospects, if you are in human resources or working with space data in facilities, Sample Superstore with things such as category and profit, it may take a little more thinking or be a bit harder to apply. So that we knew that our data sources must all use our own data or data similar to ours. We also wanted to develop resources around how-to guides, best practices, and university policies, and these should all be located in one space. Our process when we got started was to identify training that would impact the largest group first. Of those 16,000 users on our server, the majority of them had the Explorer site role, so they could log in, they could access content they had permissions to, but they may not necessarily go through what they were doing. They may not build data sources or vises. So our first training targeted them. It was around Tableau server fundamentals. We identify concepts to convey information and to share with users, and we try to relate those concepts and terminology to something that users were familiar with. We then created content and reference materials. My mom worked in the education space for over 30 years, and I always grew up hearing about how people have different learning styles and ways of retaining information. And that is something that has impacted me as I have taught others, is that I try to make sure that all learning styles are incorporated. An optional next step is that we would schedule a pilot training and then refine. This was helpful for some of our more hands-on trainings, such as our Tableau desktop trainings, because then we would be able to get feedback from the community and then, you know, change up the content or focus more on specific concepts. After we refined the training, we scheduled an open registration for monthly trainings. So our program started in July of 2022 with Tableau Server Fundamentals. We offer Tableau Server Fundamentals in July, August, September, and then in October, we transitioned to Tableau Desktop Fundamentals. When training was open, we publicized it. So we have over 100 project leaders, over 300 HETUG members, and then we would also have departmental newsletters. And so we were very targeted in who we wanted to publicize the training to. We knew that these 16,000 users were our largest base, but we also looked at where they were from. So we knew that our HR team had a number of reports out there. So we worked with our project lead from HR to publicize the training within HR newsletters. And then we would see our registration numbers skyrocket as people from HR would sign up for the training. After we had a couple of trainings, we would record and then share to the Buckeye Learn platform. Buckeye Learn is an internal training platform for Ohio State. This is where all of the trainings from our institutional data policy to FERPA, everything lives on this centralized platform. So it was a no-brainer to have Tableau training live here too. Here's an example of what we covered with our Tableau Server Fundamentals class. Terminology, so some things that may be second nature to those who have been working with Tableau for a while. is covered, as well as how to get access. So if I need access to this data or this report, who do I talk to? Navigating the platform and how to leverage it. So many of our reports follow specific standards. So we could show where you would look for filters on the dashboard or how to create and save views. We would also talk about how you could easily share or download data, as people, I think, could be a little data anxious when it came to it, asking what's behind it. So we would be able to show people how to look at certain things and create trust within the data. And then we provided contact information for our own ticketing system on who they could follow up with. I mentioned frequent terms. We knew that most people were Excel users or familiar with Excel. So we worked to have things such as workbook or terms like view to break those down and compare them to what they were in Excel. So a view would just be, a way to think of that would be a spreadsheet where the data has been filtered. We wanted to make it as unscary as possible. So over 3 months, we had over 300 people complete our Tableau server fundamentals training. We were off to a great start, and it was a great launching place for additional trainings. Over the next year, we offered Tableau desktop fundamentals, web authoring, calculations and parameters, and then Tableau prep and the data management add-on, which we have in our server environment. With web authoring and desktop fundamentals, we knew that a number of users were newer to the Tableau space, and we wanted to be able to cover how to connect to a data source, build some charts that were not tables, and then a dashboard and publish a server. We also wanted to make sure that all of our dashboards understood best practices and brand guidelines. Ohio State's colors are scarlet and gray, and scarlet is not colorblind friendly. It's also not generally a good data viz color. So we wanted to be able to teach concepts like those too. With calculations and parameters, we had created a number of templates, and we knew that our project leaders had created templates to make viz building easier. So we had users download a template, start to work with it. We covered types of calculations, bands, working with different data sources, and then parameters. With Tableau Prep, one of the things that we have found about the community is not everyone is familiar with SQL, and we didn't want that to be a barrier to somebody being able to use Prep. So we would cover why or when to use Tableau Prep as a tool. We would also talk about some of the basic SQL terms like joins and what that meant. I mentioned our branding standards. Before our training program launched, we worked with university marketing around brand.osu.edu. And these are brand guidelines for the entire university. And this page represents data visualization. So it talks about not only having best practices, but it also has resources for our color palette. So we show users on how they could download this and set this as their preferences. And then we also talked about, just some of those best practices and resources that we had out there. So what types of vizzes were recommended for what types of what you were trying to do. Here's another example. We had worked with university marketing. They attended one of our project lead meetings and asked about icons that could be used in data viz. To date, we have hundreds of icons that are out there, but this helps to standardize dashboards and what we're doing across the university. So you're not just finding something online and using that. And we showed users on where they could find this and where they could save the icons to the shapes file and then later use that in their vizzes within our desktop fundamentals. For calculations and parameters, I have the habit, or there will be cases where I will build a viz and often think, okay, this is what I want to do, but I don't quite remember the calculation on how to get there. So one of the materials that we created was a cheat sheet where anyone in the Tableau community can go in and look at column A to see what they're looking for, and then go to column B and see what the syntax is. This way, if I'm trying to find the latest date or do a month over month comparison, I can easily reference this and be like, okay, oh yeah, that's how I write the calculation, instead of just guessing and getting that error message. We also have familiarized this so much with the community in one central space that people are going in and adding calculations as they have figured things out or shot their own issues, so that this has become more of a community document and it's not just something owned by one person. And then with Tableau Prep, as I said, we talked through some of the basic SQL terms, how you would read this diagram, and kind of how Tableau Prep works. We also talked about ways to leverage it within our server environment. So are you able to use linked task? Are you able to get an output? What are some of the different things and use cases that you could have Tableau Prep for? We weren't only focused on the training piece or having these training sessions. What else we found is, as we were going through this process, is the documentation we created, and our one centralized resource was the Administrative Resource Center, or the ARC. And this more than tripled for documentation and resources. So what were just a couple of reports out there, we now have everything from how to access or request Tableau desktop access, to a cheat sheet, to using enterprise data sources, specific domain or types of reports, so student financials or finance and supply chain. We also have resources out there now for creators or project leaders so that they're better able to understand some of those things. And we've also implemented processes. So if you are transitioning across the university, this is how you would offboard. And this has really made the process easier. We've also solicited feedback from the community. So a couple months ago, we had project leads share how they publicize dashboards. We've often found that when there's a communication plan with a dashboard rollout, you will see great adoption later on. So we had them present on that. And then we took their recommendations and what they've learned, and we turned that into documentation around dashboard rollout ideas for the rest of the community. Another example is someone came to us and they said, hey, you have your training. What if you had a one-page document? So we created a one-page document, kind of doing the 101 of Tableau at Ohio State, everything from how you can access it to what the different icons mean within server, best practices, how to find content, interact with vizzes, and then how you could get help. So if you couldn't log in or you wanted to see, find the publisher, this is how you would do it. This is an easy thing to hand out to new hires or to have printed out that people can later use. In recent months, we have moved from having hour-long trainings that are on demand to short videos. These are all less than 10 minutes, but it covers everything from using the performance recording in Tableau Desktop to adding lineage and descriptions for our data catalog. So it can feed into that, to, just some very basic tips. So like, this is how you hide something within Tableau. Most are under 60 seconds and time stamped, so people can just kind of pick and choose the content that they want to see. And then finally, we have the Creator Toolkit, and this is open to all creators and web authors, which I think is close to 800 people at this point across the university. It contains everything from dashboards, so reporting around who has taken training within your area, to some of the Postgres data that we have. So you can see who's using your work, where you compare to other users across the organization, who your power users are. So what are they doing, that type of thing, to dashboard load times. We also have content around templates. So we have tested our templates for accessibility, and it's a requirement for all public facing reporting, and how people would be able to use those. And then in this section right here, we have a how-to guide, cool stuff within Tableau. This is stuff that is not in that little show me corner within Tableau desktop, but it is all something that you could easily do, often in less than 10 minutes with a few calculations. So we have this content out there, again, using Ohio State data, so that people are able to take this and run with it, or take those concepts and apply to their own work. Now, this has been a lot for 2 people over the past 15 months or so. And I think there was probably a few people in the crowd who are wondering if it's worth it. And I would say yes. So I love data. I love to analyze it. Our average weekly tickets have decreased by 75%. We're now getting fewer than 10 tickets a week, which is fantastic. And it's not that we don't like to help people. It's that we often have so much on our plates that it is hard to always find the time. We've also had over 800 trainings completed in 15 months. So this program has now kind of spread across the university. And then on a personal professional development note, for myself and Jimmy, my coworker, our program had received such recognition that one of the colleges at Ohio State hired us to teach Tableau to public service professionals. So that was a nice benefit to something that we never thought would happen when we started this. My recommendations, if you were getting started, the first would be to sit down and analyze the entire process. So how do users onboard? What do they need? What do you want them to know? Are there a series of reports? Are there norms? What do you want people, what's your goal when it comes to different groups of people who are interacting with your work within Tableau? Be practical in your training. So make sure that there is something that's easy to reference. I know one of the things that we have, and we've incorporated it into our signatures, is we have a Tableau guide to Ohio State. And this is, things that we have found helpful, or blogs, or authors, or tugs. How can you start to normalize that stuff? How can people access content again? So whether it's timestamping videos, having takeaways, other materials, make sure that they're able to, often come back. I'm not somebody that learns things once or, learns it and retains it. Usually it takes a couple different times. And then finally, having an instructor-led session and then following that up with an on-demand recording allowed us to fine-tune what we were doing. So one of the things that we heard in our calculations and parameters training was that people wanted more stuff about parameters. They wanted more content. So we were able to then break our calculations and parameters recordings into 2 separate ones and have more content or additional content for people out there who really wanted to explore parameters. And if you wanted to replicate this, so I understand Ohio State's large and not everybody is our size, but I think a lot of the struggles we have are similar to struggles that other people have. So I would say start with having or creating a central place to direct users. We have the ARC and it links to different reports and dashboards and how to use them. And we'll direct users there. But some of our project leaders and what other people have done across the university are they will use Microsoft Teams. So if they have an all advancement channel, they will go ahead and create a reporting section within that, and then they'll post reporting updates within that. What is something similar that you could use in your organization? Next, I would recommend finding institutional processes to leverage. So access to Tableau is not immediately granted at the university here. So when somebody comes on, they usually have to interact with our access management team first before they even see Tableau server. So we asked access management to update their form emails around access and to include links to our trainings. And that way somebody, once they're granted access to Tableau, they kind of have a checklist of where they can go to get additional resources. The other piece that I think is worth pursuing is, are there other people around you who are willing to share what they've created? We're more than willing to share. I would also say that, we share Word documents with all of our project leaders because some of them would like to later personalize the training or make it more specific to their teams and reporting. So we share that with them because it also helps create one standard around training, but then it also allows them to take ownership. So are there other people? Are there communities of practice? How else can you learn? And how can you get material? And finally, I think the biggest key would be communicate. So as a Tableau server admin, I can change settings on Tableau server. Not everybody can. But one of the things that we've done is we set up a banner on the homepage of our server environment. So anybody that comes in can automatically see information around training and then additional resources. We also have regular newsletters and postings that we do. So whether they're with our project leaders or HETUG, and we will share those. I know that there are some teams where they will offer Tableau doctor sessions just around those specific types of data they work with, or they will have office hours. So if people have questions, if they want to learn how to use something, that's all very easy to implement. The other thing that we have found a lot of bang for our buck is by engaging communities of practice. We will have different data communities across the university, such as marketing analytics or being able to have student data. And we have engaged with all of these groups, not to lead them or simply flies on the wall, but if there are topics or ways that we can support them, this has been helpful for us in being able to engage them and then also share information. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I don't know if we can have questions later on. I'm happy. But also, if you'd like to connect with me or connect offline and we can talk further, please feel free to email me. My email is henry.371@osu.edu, and I'm happy to talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You can see that there are a lot of kudos in the chat box, and I believe one question. How is the data for these training sessions determined? I agree that higher education, sorry, the chat scrolling. I agree that higher education data sets will be helpful. Is there a way we can create a data set that would be like Superstore with a higher education slant? That is the big question that we've been asking Tableau for years.
I was gonna say, that's the dream, right?
Yes, that is.
So I don't know how anybody else's universities work, but we have different data classifications. So things like social security number, like financial aid, HIPAA, that's all, we call that S4 data. So that's all highly classified. So we stay away from that data. And we would only use things like cost center was something that we would use. We would also find different mock data generators or very generic data. Or we would use our public data. So in one of our classes, we used data that we worked with the data steward to get their okay first. And it's around space data. So how many trees are on Ohio State's campuses? This is all publicly available, but it was a way to get people used to it, to use Ohio State's data and data that they were familiar with.
Great suggestions. I did share your email address in the chat again. And if anybody else has questions, you can follow up in the chat. I think Jimmy said that you all might be able to share that cheat sheet of calculations, which would be beyond amazing.
Yeah, I am happy to share the calculations, or the other thing that we have found is the one pager, just of the Tableau server environment. Both I think have been very helpful for our community.
And if you want to share your slides from your presentation today too, we can put those on the page.
Sure.
Wonderful. Thank you again for being our presentation for the day, one of our presentations for today, and I'll turn it over to Roshni.
So up next are Lindsay Meyers and Jan Varadarajan from Vanderbilt University, from the Office of Biomedical Research, Education, and Training. So they're going to talk to us about how they went from data cleanup to peer-reviewed publication using Tableau, and how what they learned in the process might help you if you embark on your own peer-review journey. So Lindsay is the Assistant Dean for Operations and Administration. She's been at Vanderbilt for 19 years in the same office, but in different roles, and has been using Tableau since 2018 to elevate the administrative functions and ongoing educational research at the office. Jan is the Assistant Director of Postdoc Support and Project Manager of Outcomes Research, and has been in her role since 2018. And she uses Tableau to support the analysis, interpretation, and visualization of academic and career outcomes data for PhD students from Vanderbilt's biomedical research training programs. So Lindsay and Jan, if you want to take it away, feel free.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Roshni. Let me begin the slideshow. And my colleague Jan, who helped put this all together, will be answering the chat throughout this presentation. So ask your questions there. She'll be happy to answer them. And I'm going to pin her photo here and her video. So if she wants to stop me, we can get stopped in the middle, or answer questions at the end for you. But this presentation came together just in the last, couple months, when I was speaking with somebody from the higher education Tableau user group, and they mentioned, wow, it's great that you were able to publish. I wonder how I could do that. I feel like it's a big obstacle. I don't know all the details. Could you tell me a little bit more about like how you take your everyday work and get it into a publication? So we put this together to try to be a toolkit for others, and we're hoping that you can learn something from this. But we'd love to support you, as if you can think of a project and a paper that you might like to put together, and find people to collaborate with you at your own institution. So here's what we can share with you today. This started in our paper idea started in 2021 through 2023. And we did the data prep and moved to the publication during that time period. And we'd like to go over the process for submitting the publications, kind of the challenges that we saw that you might be able to learn from, and give you some advice. But we are here to answer your questions. So let me share with you how we got started. Just to make sure that everybody is on the same page, we want to make sure that you understand what a peer-reviewed publication is. And it could be an online publication, it could be a printed journal, but basically it is a body of work and a body of knowledge that you've put together to answer some research questions and contribute to a broader national audience and a broader interest in a research environment. And a lot of times our work is applicable. We just need to figure out a way to get those ideas out. So the work that we put together would be evaluated by an editor of a journal, as well as a body of peers, maybe 3 to 5 individuals who would look at your work and decide if this was a contribution to the field. So before we begin, I want to make sure that we know why we would go through all this work, because as you can learn from any of our community members who are presenting here, everybody has a full-time job. Everyone's really busy. Why would you go through this? So I think most of us are here and we work in higher education in contrast to other places, because we think that this is a valuable place to work, and we find value in the work of working in this environment. So if we can have a broader impact on higher education, we think this might be a wonderful way to contribute to the environment that we love and the professional environment that we care about. So this may also benefit you professionally if you can invest your time in a peer-reviewed publication, you may be able to strengthen your own skills and your professional network across the country or within your own institution. What we have found also is that you may find new energy and meaning in your future work if you are kind of redirected to realizing that your work has broader implications than just pleasing the people that are asking you for information on a daily basis, to that you may find some personal enjoyment out of this. Also, if you do, you know, by disseminating your work, you may get new visibility in your organization and possibly garner new resources for your group if you can grow your team or grow the support that you have. This visibility in publishing is often recognized by academic deans and others as something that's valuable and that you're contributing to their university in a new way that you haven't previously done before. So our community that Jan and I are working with, it is in a school of medicine. It's called Biomedical Research Education and Training. And we have data. We have data that we work with all the time. We have academic deans and faculty members who are always asking us for data. So we had data, but the same questions that they're asking us are the questions that the national landscape has also. So the National Science Foundation has the same questions. The National Institutes of Health have these questions. So we wanted to figure out like how we could take our own body of data and kind of lean into the conversation at the national level. And this is often around our graduates' career changes in the biomedical workforce. So how do our graduates' careers change over time after they leave our university? How frequently do they change their goals, their career goals during their doctoral change, like doctoral training? And how frequently do they persist in various sectors over their careers? And these are questions that people are asking, so we wanted to jump into the conversation. So you all are probably very familiar with winding up with data sources that are quite siloed. And so back in 2017, 2018, we tried to figure out a way to answer questions where we could pull the data sets together with, you know, some way to join them, because often you're left with data sets that don't have a way to join them. And so you're answering questions for faculty or for deans that really don't have the fullest picture because they're not connected to one another. So we started doing the data collection and the prep to unify these together and put them into a single place in our outcomes database. And all of the data prep was done and data collection was done by our faculty and staff of a team of about 4 people in this office. Then we used the help of an engineer to put them into an outcomes database and a Postgres database. And we use different sources, Table Plus here and Aqua Data Studio to help visualize it while we were doing it to see that it was joining appropriately and that it was cleaned appropriately. This was a nice place to start visualizing it. But the real payoff is at the end when we actually use the data. So we got to explore the data, analyze it, use statistical software, reporting. And this is the really fun part on the end. And this is where our faculty and staff came in. At the end also. And this is where we used our Tableau Prep and Tableau Desktop and sometimes Prism for additional statistics, or really it's tool agnostic. Once you've got this data set together, you could use anything else if you wanted to use Power BI or something else. But when we organized ourselves, we needed to figure out if we had all the people and the on our team that were able to handle all of these different unique responsibilities. And we are sharing this table with you here today to show you that there's a lot of different things that you might need when you're gathering yourself into a publication team. You do need to have kind of the support of senior administrators, like a senior dean or someone that is going to allow you and others on your team to work on this project, whatever you've decided. So you need them to allow for the financial and human resources to be committed to this area and understand why you're doing the research. We also needed the help of a software engineer. This helped us with version control, data structuring, the best practices, firewall, documentation, the data dictionaries, the all kind of the ETL of the transformation of the data into, and this was heavy in SQL going into our outcomes database. And then Jan and I fall into kind of the staff directors here, where we are doing a lot of the analysis and the building of the visualizations, the data validation, and the quality assurance. But we also had wonderful faculty directors who were very immersed in the context of all the other research that's going on in this area. So they were able to figure out where our audience would be interested in learning. So those were some of the unique things that the faculty directors also brought into this publication with us. One of the things that I want to emphasize to you, and there's nothing that you need to pay attention to in these data slides. It's just the idea that you may start with a visualization and a figure, and then share it with the other people on the team. And the next week that you come back with another one, the next week you come back with another one. It is a very iterative process, and this will continue to go along. But it's most important to think about your audience and what's going to make sense to your audience reading a paper, of what's going to bring it together really quickly in some sort of visualization where they can glean answers, and they may, because you don't know where sometimes your publication will go. And if they take it and, use it in their own publication or their own, I guess, presentation somewhere, you want it to be easy to understand without having the paper attached to it also. Thinking about this in the way that your everyday work might happen, you all are very good at data storytelling. You're probably very comfortable in what I call the Tableau designer's comfort zone, creating something beautiful, creating something interesting. It tells a story. But one of the unique things about taking this into a publication is you're going to have this narrative that goes along with your cool visualizations that are much more mundane, but they are an abstract, an introduction, the material and methods. We are not often asked for the entire methodology. Who did you exclude? Why did you exclude them? How did you do that calculation? When did you decide to, how did you decide to build that cohort of students, and who have you excluded? Those are all kind of things in the materials and methods that you're going to have to go through in a great detail that is not often asked for you in a visualization. The results, you'll be presenting your findings, and in the discussion, you'll be taking those results and putting them into kind of the narrative of the wider discussion of the research that's already been conducted in the past and how your findings are unique to that discussion. Also, on this far right-hand area, what you'll need to take the data that you use to create visualizations, and you'll need to share it with your readers. So this may be in the form of an appendix, supplemental tables, but the important thing is that these journals want to have the data transparency. So you are providing them with the data that they can verify that you've done the right analysis, that you've done the right statistical test on them. And this is unusual because we're not often asked to share this when we're creating visualizations, but it will be part of the step of preparing a publication. So you'll need to be ready for that. And you may wonder, how do I get started? I have lots to do. But if you can immerse yourself in some existing research, so read online journals, read online blogs, editorials, what is interesting to other people? Ask other people that you're around what's interesting to them. What are the hot issues that you might be able to contribute to, or that you have a data set that you could contribute to this effort. And finding your data set. You may have a data set that you can use for this. We did not have a problem kind of de-identifying our data and making sure that we had enough people in every cohort so that nobody was identifiable. You may have something that you could use already. You may want to look at a national data set. There are organizations out there, government agencies that have already spent a lot of money collecting data from you, whether it's an IPEDS or National Science Foundation, and it could be an NIH, could be National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics. You can find something that is relevant to you. I've written a paper before just using a national data set from the Center for Science and Engineering Statistics. So having a data set that is available should not be the problem. It's just really finding the motivation and what's exciting that you can contribute to this. one of the important steps is picking a journal. So you'll need to figure out who is your audience and what journals are they reading? Because if you put your findings in the wrong journal, it's not going to get to the right people. So you want to find out who are the people that are the decision makers, and what are they reading, and how could you have an impact, and how could you find the place to have an impact. So this will take some time, but this is a great place to get started. You eventually will like to find 3 to 5 journals to target in some sort of rank order of meeting your audience and prestige to get the greatest number of people in your target audience. So this, this is something that I think you will want to do at the beginning of your publication to make sure that your areas and your questions and whatever your findings are relatable to your audience. And I say this, I want to make sure that you all know that there are fees attached to publications. These may be kind of some open source areas. They could have very low fees. They could be $1,000. They could be $1,500. They could be $2,000. So be ready for that. I know everyone comes from different resources and different environments. So if you're collaborating with other people, talk about this at the beginning so you know how those costs will be shared, so it's not a surprise at the end. And we don't want that to be a barrier for you actually publishing. So I think that's also something to consider when you're picking a journal. We found, and we just want to share these with you, that everyone has a full-time job. So it's going to be challenging for your team. And you may not have all the expertise on your team. So you might have to recruit more people, or you might have to go out and teach yourself, which is something I think we all learn to do along the way. We enlisted the help of the Department of Biostatistics when we didn't have those people on our team, and they were very useful and gave us everything we needed to get the publication out the door. And it's also important to keep a schedule because this can drag on for a long time and it can go for years. And then sometimes the research is just outdated and it's not really of interest to your population anymore. So keep a schedule so you can get the research out in a timely manner. We also wanted to share that there were some challenges of figure sharing and documentation. Only 2 of our 5 authors had access to like a Tableau desktop. And at the time we didn't have a server when we started this paper. So it was really difficult to share. So figure out how you're going to do that from the beginning and where you can put it. I mean, maybe you can even create some things on, in Tableau Public if you can want to share things with a research team, but you think about where you want to do this. We use some project management tools like Confluence. We use OneDrive for the narrative editing, so everybody contribute all the time. And that actually worked really well. If you're thinking about doing this across institutions, you want to figure out that everybody can access those without a problem. So just make a plan at the beginning for how you're going to share figures and files and versions. So I think this will be much tidier if you think about that from the beginning. And we want to remind you that there's a lot of hard choices. When you spend a lot of time on a particular question and a particular figure, you want it to go in, but sometimes you just have to cut it. And sometimes it doesn't really illustrate the main points of the paper. Sometimes it is distracting to the main points and it's going to get cut. And you just have to realize that, and that there's a greater achievement at the door, knocking at the door, that this publication must get out the door. So don't take it personally, and just know that it will get out the door without all 75 figures that you've created. At the end, there's important things to think about. It's getting a few colleagues who'd be willing to read your final drafts. It's important to find people who haven't been involved in the entire process of writing this paper, because they will give you great insights before it goes to an editor, before it goes to some peer-reviewed, peers there. But please note that you're going to have to, when you look at your journals, all the journals will have different areas that they need in a certain order, and they will vary between the journals. Sometimes they want the methods first, sometimes they want it later after this, so you got to look at each of the journals that you're submitting to and know which order they need to belong in. We also have a matrix for authorship order that may be helpful if you haven't done this before, so we can share that with you all. We found that useful for documenting who's participated in all the various steps along the way. Eventually, when you submit your paper, you'll have a cover letter to an editor, and this is where you mention the peer reviewers that you have chosen in the cover letters. They may not get selected, they may get selected, but this is at least a place where you can help direct who is going to receive this for review. And what I experienced this past submission is that the submission portals are very clunky. Just know that give yourself an afternoon to submit them. Be patient, because you'll get error boxes, you'll get rejects, something. There's no clear way to see what's going on, and then it might just take you a lot of time because they're not always the best user interface in these submission portals. And we also would like to share to remember that the editors have the final decisions, and sometimes you can get a denial without actually being sent out to reviewers. So just get ready for the next journal. You could even start working on the submission for the journal before you've received an answer from the first one if you want to speed up this process. And then when you do get an offer to send this out for reviewers, and you get answers back from the reviewers, you may have to turn these revisions around pretty quickly. So be ready for that. Don't take the whole summer off, because those revisions might really need a much closer turnaround. Usually, sometimes we even have like a week turnaround for handling all of the reviewers' concerns. So some may think that the paper is ready and you're done after it's published, but there's actually the final step of completion, which is getting the word out. And this could be through a variety of places to hit your target audience. This could be on your personal socials and your LinkedIn. This could be on departmental institutional socials. It could be department seminars, town halls. You can attend national conferences and put these in as talks or posters. You can hold your own virtual community meeting and invite the higher education Tableau user groups to attend. You can, if you are working in a really unique area of research, think of the people who you need to target and invite them to a virtual meeting. We want your word to get out to affect change and to affect the conversation, to be a voice in that national conversation. So figure out what works for you. Jan and I would like to thank you here for listening to us, but most of all, we want to hear about your ideas, and we would love for to support you if you decide to publish your work and publish in any fashion. We'd love to help you and support you in that. We'd like to thank all of our fellow paper authors who you can see here, faculty and deans and statisticians along the way, and engineers. But what questions do you have? Are there questions in the chat, Jan, or are there questions that we should answer? Somebody can take themselves off mute if they would like.
Jan's actually been doing a really great job answering questions in the chat. But Jan, if you want to.
No, I mean, we don't have any other questions in the chat, and I am just typing in our emails where you can reach out to us if you would like to reach out to us directly. But like Lindsay said, we are always, looking for opportunities to collaborate either on resources or on the research and questions. And some of the presentations, meetings that we go to, they like to have, cross multi-institutional presentations. So it would be great if you come up with some research questions and we can collaborate on that, and we can move both of our ideas forward.
It's great. Thank you guys so much for sharing your peer review journey. If there are more questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. We're also going to be opening up a breakout room shortly to talk more about peer review and publications for those of you who are interested. In the meantime, we are going to wrap up for today. And like every every meeting. We want to know what you thought. Let us know through the links I just shared. What was great about this meeting? What would you change? What would you like to see more of or less of, or all of those things? We also have next month's Higher Ed Tug scheduled for April 16th. We are looking for a Meeted community member for that session. So if you want us to interview you, now's the time. Go ahead and fill out the Present at HETUG link and let us know. We're also going to hear about Tableau Conference 24, a Know Before You Go with Lisa Trescott, Iron Viz 2021 winner, Tableau Tip Battle winner at TC 23, one of the co-leads of the California Community Colleges TUG, and I'm probably missing like 75 million more things about Lisa. You know that there's going to be a pun in that presentation. We're also going to learn a little bit more about how you can kind of not miss a beat with your data through one of Tableau's new offerings, Tableau Pulse. Harold Thomas and probably friends from Tableau will share how Tableau Pulse works and how with higher education data. This is something that came up earlier in Maureen's presentation. It's great if we can actually see our own data or higher ed data, and they are going to be using higher ed data in their Tableau Pulse demo. And again, if you want to present, the link is in the chat there. We also have some sign-up information for TC24. There is the link for that. And if you're in higher ed, when you register, you should be able to pick your industry, and education and nonprofits will get a discount. I believe it's about a third, maybe a little bit more. There's also a TUG promo, which is a little bit less. Actually, I guess it's a little bit more than a third. The 35% off for TUG members or TUG attendees is also available if you are not in education or nonprofit. So sign up. And yeah, we want to thank everyone again. Thanks to Jim for letting us ask him random questions about his enablement of Tableau, to Maureen for sharing how the Ohio State has created a training program, a very, very robust training program, and to Lindsay and Jan for sharing their peer review publication process, and for all of you for attending, because we couldn't have a Tableau user group without you guys.